guys, it's Midnight Shadow Relaxation, and this Christmas I am going to be reading you some children's Christmas winter themed books. So I hope you enjoy it. Just relax, try to fall asleep if you can. I apologise if you can hear any road traffic or my squeaky footstool. So we're going to start with The Gruffalo's Child by Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. I've borrowed this from my neighbour and their kids. The Gruffalo said that no Gruffalo should ever set foot in the deep dark wood. Why not? Why not? Because if you do, the big bad mouse will be after you. I met him once, said the Gruffalo. I met him a long, long time ago. What does he look like? Tell us, Dad. Is he terribly big and terribly bad? I can't quite remember, the Gruffalo said, though he thought for a minute and scratched his head. The big bad mouse is terribly strong, and his scaly tail is terribly long. His eyes are like pools of terrible fire, and his terrible whiskers are tougher than wire. One snowy night, when the Gruffalo snored, the Gruffalo's child was feeling bored. The Gruffalo's child was feeling brave, so she tiptoed out of the Gruffalo cave. The snow fell fast and the wind blew wild. Into the wood went the Gruffalo child. Aha! Oh ho! A trail in the snow! Whose is this trail and where does it go? A tail poked out of a log pile house. Could this be the tail of the big bad mouse? Out slid the creature, his eyes were small, and he didn't have whiskers, no, none at all. You're not the mouse. Not I, said the snake. He's down by the lake, eating Gruffalo cake. The snow fell fast, and the wind blew wild. I'm not scared, said the Gruffalo child. Aha! Oh-ho! Marks in the snow. Whose of these claw marks? Where do they go? Two eyes gleamed out of a treetop house. Could these be the eyes of the big bad mouse? Down flew the creature, his tail was short, and he didn't have whiskers of any sort. You're not the mouse. Twoo-hoo, not I, but he's somewhere nearby eating Gruffalo pie. The snow fell fast and the wind blew wild. I'm not scared, said the Gruffalo's child. Aha! Oh-ho! A track in the snow. Whose track is this and where does it go? Whiskers at last and an underground house. Could this be the home of the big bad mouse? Out slunk the creature, his eyes weren't fiery, his tail wasn't scaly, his whiskers weren't wiry. You're not the mouse. Oh no, not me. He's under a tree, drinking Gruffalo tea. It's all a trick, said the Gruffalo's child, as she sat on a stump where the snow lay piled. I don't believe in the big bad mouse. But here comes a little one out of his house. Not big, not bad, but a mouse at least. You'll taste good as a midnight feast. Wait, said the mouse, before you eat, there's a friend of mine that you ought to meet. If you'll let me hop onto a hazel twig, I'll beckon my friend so bad, so big. The Gruffalo's child unclenched her fist. The big bad mouse, so he does exist. The mouse hopped onto the hazel tree. He beckoned, then said, just wait and see. Out came the moon, it was bright and round. A terrible shadow fell onto the ground. Who is this creature so big, bad and strong? His tail, his whiskers are terribly long. His ears are enormous, and over his shoulder he carries He carries a nut as big as a boulder. The big bad mouse, yelled the Gruffalo's child. The mouse jumped down from the twig and smiled. Aha, aho, prints in the snow. Whose are these footprints and where do they go? The footprints led to the Gruffalo cave, where the Gruffalo's child was a bit less brave. The Gruffalo's child was a bit less bored. And the Gruffalo snored and snored and snored. The end. I haven't read that book in such a long time, so I hope that helped you relax a little bit. The next children's story that I'll be reading you this Christmas is Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The inside of the front cover has a picture of Dr. Seuss up here, and it says, Dr. Seuss makes reading fun. Who was Dr. Seuss? His name was Theodore Seuss Geisel, and he wasn't really a doctor. How did he make reading fun? Dr. Seuss thought traditional reading books were boring, so he set out to write a fun story using only 250 simple words. The result was The Cat in the Hat. What happened next? Dr. Seuss was challenged to write a book using only 50 words. That's fewer than half of the words on this page. He won the challenge with green eggs and ham, and around the border are some of his characters, like the Cat in the Hat and the Lomax. My footstool is squeaky and my dog is snoring, and there is occasionally a big lorry that goes over there, so I apologise if you hear any other noises. Every Who, oh that was a good start. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop this Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush for their toys. And then oh the noise, noise, noise. The one thing he hated, the noise. Then the Whos young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beef. Not beef, Who roast beast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around. But since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, get up, and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out the fireplace flue. Where the little Who's stockings all hung in a row, these stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all of the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox, he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding, he took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee, and now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree, why? But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied, there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child, then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was a log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls was left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses. leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was dawn, and all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a-snooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's, he was Grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. The end. So, I hope you're already asleep, or at least relaxed, but if not, this is the last book we'll read tonight, and it's The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore, and it's very old. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagle his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in all fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned up with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." The end. I hope you enjoyed the children's Christmas story readings. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas filled with love and laughter and family and friends. Take care and sleep well.